isosceles triangles. Okay, isosceles triangles has two sides that are congruent. Okay, and the two congruent sides of our isosceles triangle are called our legs. Okay, we're on page 45. Okay, so the legs are the congruent sides. Okay, our base is the side that's not congruent to the other two. Does that make sense? Okay, and then our base angles are the two angles that are down on the base, okay, that are opposite our congruent sides. Okay, got that? All right, so what you need to know is if two sides are congruent, okay, so if you have an isosceles triangle, you've got two sides that are congruent, its base angles are also congruent. Okay, so if you see a triangle and it's marked congruent, congruent, you know the angles, the two angles below it are also congruent. Make sense? Okay, if it's drawn this way, oh, that's not how I wanted to draw it. If it, it hates me. I have no idea. Alright, so meanwhile, if it's drawn this way, and these two sides are congruent, these two angles would be the ones that are congruent. Okay, see the difference there? Why doesn't it work all of a sudden? Okay, and then the opposite's true. If I've got two angles that are congruent on the bottom, the sides are also congruent. Okay? Nothing major there. Okay, so if we're going to use it, okay, it says, is AB congruent to CB? Can we decide that?
Yes.
Why?
Because, I don't know. Well, because they're
Because the two angles.
Yep. I've got an angle here, and I've got an angle here. The side, yeah, I've got the two, and the two sides that go with those two angles are my AB and my BC. So yes, because base angles are congruent. Okay, and then they want to know, is A congruent to DEA? DEA is right here, right? And that's going to be a yes, because what? Because we've got our two legs are congruent right here. AD is congruent to DE. So if those two sides are congruent, then my base angles are also going to be congruent. Okay, we've got that. All right, let's look at this. Okay, if this angle is 115, what does this angle have to be? Anybody? How do we know that? Yeah, this is a linear pair, yep. Okay, so this is going to be 65. So if this is 65, what does x have to be? X has to be 65 because they are base angles of an isosceles triangle. So if this is 65 and this is 65, can I find y? Because the three angles of a triangle add up to 180, so this plus this is 130, so that leaves what left over?
50.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. Well, there was one person that answered. I don't know. There's 20 people in here trying to get everybody else to think a little bit too and not just mooch off of everybody else's answers. Be active participants in your own learning. Okay, so this one, what's this angle going to be? No. 45. 45?
I'm at 45.
Well, that's not what you said. Okay, so if that's 45, what is x? 45. Okay, so these two angles add up to what? 90, and that leaves what left over for y? 90. Okay. You need to just jot down a couple of things about equilateral triangles. That's fine. Okay. Equilateral triangles, all three sides and all three angles are congruent. So if I have an equilateral triangle, boom, 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 all three sides are going to be congruent. Okay, now here's the deal. If all three angles are congruent, how much is each angle? Because triangles add up to 180, so if I divide my 180 by 3, all three of them are going to have to be 60-degree angles. Okay, so isosceles has how many congruent sides? 2. Okay, and if it's got 2 congruent sides, what else is congruent? The base angles. Yep, the base angles. How many sides of an equilateral triangle are congruent? All 3 sides, and all 3 angles are congruent, and they are equal to 60 degrees.